and welcome back to the show. Now, what if the same mindset that creates Olympic champions can help us execute at a higher level in business? Well, we are discussing this topic today, the link between athletic excellence and business success. Now, my guest today is an award-winning entrepreneur and a best-selling author. His book, Move It or Lose It, Play the Game, and Fit Body, Fit Business. He himself is a former elite athlete and has trained alongside Olympic champions like Mo Farah. He's also the host of The Business Strategist, which is a globally top-ranked podcast where he's interviewed 1,000 world-leading performers. He's also graced the cover of magazines like Forbes, People magazine, and The Huffington Post. So he truly is a game changer, and he's been helping entrepreneurs around the world build purpose-led, highly profitable businesses. And I am extremely grateful he's here with us today to share his knowledge and his experience. Welcome to the show, Adam Strong.
Thanks very much, Julia. Really appreciate the kind invitation and really looking forward to our conversations.
I am. I'm so excited about this because for a long time, I've had this belief, my background in sport and fitness and everything, that the importance of sports performance and athletic performance and its relation to business. And so this is something I really think you're going to be able to teach us a lot about. But before we get into that, because yourself, you started off as an elite athlete yourself from a young age. So I want to understand your journey before we get into the nuts and bolts of what you do, what that journey was like for you and how you kind of decided that, using these principles of elite sport in business is so important.
Yeah, it's a fascination. I actually got into elite athletics purely, I suppose you could call it accidental. When I grew up, life was tough, really, I'll be honest with you. I lost my hair to alopecia when I was 10 years old. So, and that was purely because I had a lot of stress and worry as a child. And, alopecia back in those days was probably not so well known. Obviously, when you think of alopecia, you think of Duncan Goodhue, who fell out of the tree and he lost his hair, right? So I lost my hair at the age of 10. And as I transitioned into high school, I endured quite a lot of bullying because, kids, they're very insecure if you're a little bit different. And so I didn't really have a huge amount of friends and I got bullied a lot. One of the things that I did when I was 11 years old, I kind of got a little bit sick and tired of life, if I'm honest with you. And this was probably 12 months after my hair had fallen out. And I was like, okay, what can I do here? And so my father, got started in athletics and distance running, and he was like, why don't you give it a shot type of thing. So I went down to the local athletics track on my own and I basically said, hey, I'm looking to join the athletics club. And she was like, okay, great, what do you want to do? Like sprinting, field events? And I was like, well, I'd prefer to do distance running actually. She was like, great, I'll introduce you to the coach and then you can go from there. And at the time, Julia, I suffered from chronic asthma. So you're probably thinking, well, why would someone that has asthma jump into running, right? That's ludicrousy. And so that really didn't cross my mind. What I was kind of focused on is I really kind of wanted to do something that made me feel good. Yeah, it was kind of a self-confidence booster. So I got introduced to the coach at the time and his name was Alex McGee. Alex had basically back from a very younger age, he turned normal Joe blogs into champions. That's what he was known for. And so that's kind of, I think for the first 6 months, I struggled so much. I could barely run round the track without really kind of hyperventilating and gasping for air. It was a real struggle. I could have just thrown the towel in and especially in the winter time when it gets extremely cold, when you breathe in the cold air, what it does to your lungs is it actually internally bruises the lungs. And that's why people struggle to gasp for oxygen. And so it was a real struggle. I could barely run a couple of 100 meters without really kind of gasping for air. And then after a period of time, after persevering, because when I first started going in running, I started comparing myself to other people. And I thought to myself, initially, I'm never going to be as good as these people. Like, look at them, they're flying around. And there was poor me. Like, there was me, I was starting out, was trying to find my feet with everything. And then after about 6 months, I started to adapt. My lungs started to adapt, my mindset started to change. And this is where I this is where I met my training partner at the time. And as you guys know, is Mo Farah, who Mo come from Somalia. He lived in West London, not far from where I lived, didn't speak particularly good English. And in fact, he was also bullied a lot because of he was different, like I was. What was really interesting is that during the training sessions on a Tuesday and a Thursday evening, is that we would typically train together. And so we would, at the winter time, there was a big muddy, boggy field over the back of the athletics track, and we would literally put in the reps. That's how it started. So yeah, and obviously as time progressed, my confidence started to build, but it was also a great way to just block out the distractions in life. You know, it was a great way to just get super focused, become super disciplined. And at the time, I was extremely busy. You know, I had school, I had homework, as all kids do at that age, you know, and then you've got your training, you want to play video games, you want to go play with friends like that. You know, it was just a busy time for me. I'd get up at 6, go to bed late, that kind of thing, and just grind it out, really. So that's kind of like where it all started for me.
Well, it's interesting because it was just going through my mind there, many of the sort of things you were learning through that whole process of being able to focus and really, you know, knuckle down and get on with the job in hand rather than being distracted. It's actually kind of would you say that that's where you need to be when you're starting out in business? That's kind of what you need to almost get a grip on to start that journey of building your business, and it's going to keep you going throughout the whole process of that.
I think there's I would probably say that there are 3 to 5 things that I took away from my athletics career, more specifically, that to this day that I use. So the first thing obviously is making sure that you are in the right environment. You know, running your own business, being a CEO or a founder, it's lonely. And so if you don't have a sounding board, if you don't have a board of trusted advisors, if you don't have mentors that you look up to, or people that you can kind of use as a bit of a sounding board, if you want to call it that, it's hard. It's tough. No one has all the answers. So that's, well, number one. Number 2 is focus. Obviously, focus is more important than intelligence. You know, you could have master's degrees, you could have phenomenal amount of knowledge, but entrepreneurship is different. You know, it's completely different. Practicality, you know, so making sure that you become super focused, and that requires removing and eliminating as many distractions as possible. We're surrounded and bombarded with social media, with emails, you know, as we mentioned offline, running a family. Yeah. So there are so many distractions, and the key is to become self-aware of those distractions and find ways in which you can effectively get into what I call your zone. Yeah. So that's the third part is your zone. Your zone is everyone's zone is different. Okay. So when I talk about the zone, what I talk about is what is the dimension that you're putting yourself in so that you can immerse yourself into delivering quality, outstanding work, whatever that looks like, you know? So I think that's my third point and call. The fourth one I mentioned this is self-discipline. No one's going to get you up. No one's going to motivate you. No one is going to kick your ass. You have to kick yourself.
Yeah.
It is self-motivation. It's difficult at the best of times, but with intention, with purpose, with vision, and you understand what drives you, that's the difference. Yeah. Same with that in athletics, understanding what drives you, what's the purpose in why we're doing what we're doing is understanding and self-awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think that's what sort of, if you set aside, say, an entrepreneur to someone who is a board director, like a CEO or a chairman of a big corporate business, and that's why there's such a great link between entrepreneurship and sporting performance or sporting behaviors principles?
Yes. Do you think there's what, sorry?
Because in some ways, you know, CEOs, yes, they have a huge amount of pressure from the company and to perform, and if they don't, they're out. But as you say, with the similarity between entrepreneurs and, say, a high-performing athlete, say a Mo Farah or Roger Federer or Ronaldo, yes, or someone like that, is you are very, very self-reliant in many ways. And, you know, okay, if you build yourself a big business, you'll have assistants and managers and all these different people around you. But at least when you're starting out, it is very much, it's down to you. And this is why this is so important, I think, to understand and take those principles, learn that sort of resilience and level of focus, and use those sporting principles, because they help build it in you in a way that it doesn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it wouldn't necessarily in a corporate setting.
No. Well, in a way, though, there are key similarities between key decision makers like CEOs and founders and elite athletics or elite athletes. There are similarities because if you look at, for example, if you look at the day-to-day activities, you look at what you do in your lifestyle, there are very similar core traits. And sometimes people don't practice what they preach. For example, the importance of accountability. We talk about that in entrepreneurship a lot of the time. If you're not accountable towards your results, then how can you achieve? Same with athletics, right? You've got to be accountable and understand what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, how could you make improvements to, because there's no such thing as perfect. So this is things that we're taught, whether it be on a YouTube video, whether it be on LinkedIn or whatever it is. These things we're taught. If I go interview the CEO Larry Page of Google, or if I go and interview Jeff Bezos, I can pretty much say to you that, for example, I might say, well, what's the 5 keys to success? They'll probably give you something very similar to a Roger Federer or an Andre Agassi or whatever it might be. They're going to be quite similar in their own ways, but it's how we practice what we preach. Okay. We could say something, but do we actually put it into practice?
And do you think that's the main thing that holds many people back? It's that, and what is the reason that maybe they get held back by these things, is that putting things into practice. Because it's one thing, like you say, saying you're going to do something, but you've got so many things that come in, and whether it's a self-belief, a fear issue or something else, that actually may start making excuses. And that, I think, from entrepreneurship, because you are having to be so self-reliant, it's very easy to talk yourself out of doing things and make excuses to do something that can be very difficult and can really challenge you to be able to make that progress.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about taking ownership. But we have to understand why we're doing something. Like what justification? If when you wake up every morning, what's the point? What's driving me to get out of bed? Like, what is, from my perspective, I have a particular drive. I have a particular mission, if you want to call it that. That's what drives my motivation. You have to understand what drives you, not just motivates you, but what intentionally drives you emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Like, what is actually going to get you to move from point A to point B? And that's that connection and understanding of that. Because if you don't have that purpose, if you don't, then what's the point? You start to then question your own inner self, and you kind of think, well, I speak to founders day in, day out, and they've been in business for like 25, 30 years. And you can see they're worn out. Like I say to them, I'm like, so you've been doing your thing for like 25, 30 years or whatever it is. Why do you keep turning up? You look tired. You look knackered. Something's got to change. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Yeah. Right? But ultimately, you have to know what you want to change in terms of creating that awareness and actually learning from people that have been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. If you want to achieve a set goal, or, learn from the people that have already done it. It's so much easier rather than trying to reinvent the model and trying to do something off your own accord.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that's a big challenge that entrepreneurs have? Is like you say, you've been doing something for a long time. You started out with a passion for a particular thing, whatever that may be. But one thing entrepreneurs should be good at, or are supposed to be good at, is pivoting when things aren't going right. I think it was Douglas Murray said that the difference between politicians and business people is like, when there's a wall coming, like a politician will keep going until they hit that wall and then they'll pivot. Whereas the entrepreneur tends to have the foresight to see, there's a problem coming, there's a wall in front of me, I'm going to pivot before I hit that wall. But for some people, is the reason they struggle, and is this the big challenge for some, is that they struggle with the change, or realizing that something that they once were passionate about and built, highly successful business maybe on, that now is no longer working, and they're not able to push it through, and they forget that they've got to pivot.
Well, I don't think it's I don't think it's a matter of pivoting or adapting or anything like that. I think it's about creating self-awareness and what knowing is where to go to find out the answers to the problem. Yeah. So I'll use this as an example. You've got a business. We talked about the business owner that's been in business for a while, and business has plateaued, it's flatlined or whatever it is. They know that something is quite off. They know something's off. But number one, we've got to accept the reality. That's the first thing. Second, Secondly, do we want to do something about it? Okay. And number three, if we do want to do something about it, what are my options? What am I doing now that I should be doing? Yeah. So this is where going back to change. What is it that I'm doing self-sabotage? What is it that am I making certain decisions that's affecting the team, for example? Like, it's creating that self-awareness and knowing kind of, again, it's difficult when you're running a business. Okay. It's hard when you're working in the trenches, because unless you've got someone outside the business that can give you a 360-degree perspective and say, Julia, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? This is why you've got gap here, gap here, gap here. You might not be aware of that because you're working in the trenches. You're getting your hands dirty. You're doing certain things, right? But if you've got that outside perspective that can tell you about your strengths, your weaknesses, you're aware of it. And that's what it is. It's down to self-awareness. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And that's actually just came to my mind about coming to focus there. I mean, particularly at the times like we're experiencing now, economic problems, wars and all this, you then become hyper-focused at trying to keep your business going, keep everyone happy, keep your employees happy, make sure everything's running as smoothly as it can. So like you say, you're so focused on being in the trenches and trying to sort out all the problems. And it's almost like I need to step out and spend some time analysing and reevaluating and maybe making a few changes. But at the same time, it's also, well, if I come out, then it could all collapse.
Could do. But, if you don't take risk, then you're never going to know. You're just going to be guessing.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people get so complacent within a comfort zone. They know that something is off or something needs to change, but they're not prepared to do the work. They're not prepared to do something different because they don't want to disrupt, or they don't want to shake things up, or what do you call it? Shake the ship a little bit.
Yeah.
But fortunately, if we as people want to grow as entrepreneurs, or we want to be better and adapt, we have to learn by taking risks.
Yeah.
And as long as you can manage that risk, you shouldn't have a problem. But I think, and here's a really good story, actually. I remember working with a lady in legal services. And what was really interesting is, she had phenomenal dreams and aspirations for her business. What she was lacking was self-confidence. And I said to her, what seems to be the challenge here? You seem to say to me, we've got some great ideas. We could do this, do this, do this. I said, but what's actually going to implement the change? What she had was a mindset blockage. And she said to me, she was like, I'm scared. I don't want to do too many changes. I went, okay, so do one or two changes, whatever you feel is comfortable. But ultimately, if you want to get out of this plateau, if you want to change things, I'm telling you, learn from someone that's done it like myself and just bring it in slowly. And that's what kind of and obviously she's implemented that.
Yeah. Well, obviously you're very well known as well. It's not just men you help you. You're very well known for supporting women in business. I wondered, is there a big difference between how women approach these things as opposed to men in a similar position? Because obviously both can have equal amounts of success. Obviously you approach your business, maybe your mindset towards it, your behaviors and habits around business may be slightly different based on your nature, as it were, what you're genetically pre-programmed to be like. But is there a big difference? Do women struggle more than men? And if so, what would that reason be?
I think, obviously, you would have read the book Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, and so, yes, men and women are wired differently. The way that we think is differently. The way that we control our emotions, the way that the way that we communicate and articulate ourselves. And of course, what I know about women is that women just have as much tools and success as men do. It's just being able to, there aren't, when you think about role models, when you think about successful women compared to successful men, well, again, you probably will be able to think about like the Larry Pages and the Steve Jobs. They're all men, of course, right? When it comes to women, there might be the Oprah Winfrey or whatever it is, like whoever inspires you. You can become whoever you want to become. You can be as successful as anybody else. I think the question that you're alluding is, can women be as successful as men? Absolutely. There's no reason why not. There's no Bible that says women will never be as successful as men. That's a complete false belief system.
Yeah.
Right. So I do think that it's all about opportunity and knowing our strengths and weaknesses and just doing what you need need to do.
Yeah. Do you think it's important though for women as well? It's like we tend to let our emotions get in the way of a lot of things.
Yeah.
We always assume that men can sort of block things out much more easily than women can. And is that something that is that sort of quite a core thing that women need to sort of learn to do? Or is it actually quite beneficial that in many cases, we are more emotionally aware maybe? I mean, I don't want to pigeonhole anyone or put anyone in a...
Yeah, potentially. I think it's about understanding your masculine and feminine energy and how that plays an important role. Ultimately, we're two different species.
Yeah.
Men need women and women need men. It's as simple as that, right? And knowing how to, use use each other if you want, learn from each other so that we can, so that there can be a bit more, equality, if you want to call it that, and having more opportunities. But there's no reason why women can't achieve the same as men.
Yeah. No, 100%. So for you, I mean, how important is it? I mean, I always like to bring things as well as the business side into the importance of health and wellness as well. I mean, obviously you've had your athletic background and you've worked a lot with athletes and used those principles. But I've always believed that the core of any success, be it business or anything else, that having a good core of health and wellness, it kind of opens up so many things. I think if you struggle with your physical, mental, emotional, social well-being, all these things, then that can impact as well how you perform in business and the success you're going to see moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking offline about the struggles of entrepreneurship. It's real. Being able to, I was going to say, I mean, in terms of like a framework, if you want to call it that, yeah, of course you've got to make sure that you are in tip-top condition, because otherwise, who else is going to look after yourself? No one else is going to look after yourself. You've got to look after yourself. So,
well, in terms of managing the stresses and pressures that come along with whether you're starting out a business or whether you're already at top level, is being able to maintain that so you can keep that focus and keep mentally and physically performing and showing up each day. I guess that's kind of where I was thinking with that.
100%.
Yeah. So in terms of when people come to you for your help, what would you say that you've noticed is the overall, I mean, I guess we're generalizing here, everyone's different, they come with their own set of issues and problems that they need to overcome. But overall for you, what is the biggest thing that you find that people struggle with
regards to
with achieving the success that they want, being able to perform and get to that point where they are sort of highly profitable, highly successful, and they're achieving those goals that they set in the first place?
I think there's a couple of things really. I always find that mindset plays a very important role there, because ultimately I can give you a strategy about how to scale and exit your business if I really wanted to, if you really wanted that. But ultimately, if you've got mindset blockages, if you're carrying around a childhood trauma, for example, or those things are going to impede you, they're going to slow you down. It's like creating friction. One of the things that I think is so underestimated is understanding the struggles of where, if, for example, you were trying to get from destination A to destination B, what's the struggle? What's the underlying core about why you're not achieving what? It's about understanding, no one's perfect. But I think that, understanding your mindset barriers is phenomenally underestimated. Showing vulnerability, being human, creating content, that kind of stuff is all really, really crucial. But I think that mindset wise, if you're not achieving what if you're not achieving what you want to achieve, it's to then take a step back and think to yourself, okay, well, why is it that I'm not achieving what is it that I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing? What am I self-sabotaging? What are the consequences of taking action or not taking action? It's really understanding those mindset blockages. I'm constantly questioning everything that I do all the time. A belief system that I may have. You may have a certain belief system that you hold on to. And it's one of the questions that I ask my subconscious, which is, why do you believe the way that you believe? So it's really kind of like questioning why you do what you do and what drives decisions. So I think that mindset plays such an important role in getting crystal clear and focus on what you want. What does success look like to you? What does achievement look like to you? What are the role models in your life? Who is it that you can learn from? Things like that.
Yeah, because I think oftentimes we tend to look at the service you offer or how you produce your product or service and how you offer that product or service. Well, sometimes that isn't necessarily the problem. It can be purely purely how you're showing up and purely the limits you're putting on yourself psychologically or emotionally that's stopping you from taking that next step. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree. And it's all about, I have a big fascination in psychology and understanding how to articulate your value in a certain way, how to communicate in a certain way that connects with your key ICP or ideal customer persona, understanding from, creating personal resonance and authenticity, so I think from my perspective, I think it's, especially with content that I create, I'm very mindful because there's so much nonsense out there. We're overloaded with so much information. People don't want to be teased with. People want substance. They actually want to be able to improve their life, be able to, whatever that looks like, whether it be using a particular roadmap. I typically share useful insights on client conversations, for example, or my day-to-day behind the scenes. Like, what does that look like? I want people to know me as a human being because that's where trust and relationships are built.
Yeah. Do you think that's becoming more and more important now? I mean, we had offline, I was talking earlier about the importance of authenticity and coming from your heart and getting back to the essence of what your purpose and what your meaning for doing what you're doing is.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it doesn't matter what business you're in. Everyone is in the relationships business. I don't care who you can argue to the cows come home, but you're all in the relationships business. If you don't have trust with your audience or your prospects and you can't learn to build relationships, it's never going to work. It doesn't matter how phenomenal your product or service is. It could solve a million things, but ultimately you got to trust is the number one currency. I always talk about it a lot. And that's where connection comes in. And that's going to separate you from what's out there currently, especially with a lot of the AI slop that's out there as well.
Yeah. I mean, is that something that people do struggle with as well, is being able to build that trust? Not that they don't want to build that trust. It's like with the amount of things that are coming at them, tasks that they have to do that they can't necessarily put off, is that having that time to go out there and build that. They always have somebody else who's doing their social media from them. They also a PR agent or a PA who's handling everything else. So they don't get, and the higher you climb that ladder, the higher you are up that ladder, the less of that human connection you get. You're kind of almost cut off from that. But is that a good thing or can that be quite detrimental?
I'll be honest with you. People are lazy. People are always looking for a shortcut, right? People are always looking for ways to make their life easier. But it comes at a price. Yeah. Yes, you can systemize your business. Yes, you can use AI for this. You can create SOPs, campaigns, whatever it is. But ultimately, we're all looking to make our lives easier. Yeah. But again, like I said to you, it comes at a cost. So it's about balancing that cost with the achievement, so there's a fine line between the two. And yeah, that's kind of like my thoughts about that.
Yeah. And do you find people are quite sort of chaotic in terms of how they organize their day, their month? Is that something as well that maybe people struggle with? It's certainly something I've struggled with. I've got so many things and then you get so distracted, but you're not actually sitting. You sit down and I've written out countless plans and methods and with all good intention, but then it goes by the wayside because I get defocused or something else comes in to distract you. Is that something that can be a problem for people as well?
I mean, we're just generalizing here, but what I found, I can just kind of like share from my personal perspective. I find that, yeah, we can obviously be distracted, but I feel like really one of the reasons why people behave the way that they do is because they have a fear of judgment. They're scared about what other people's opinions of themselves and how that looks like to their brands, maybe it be detrimental. But ultimately, I found, especially with me personally, not so much now because I'm aware of it, but I found that actually one of the number one reasons why I don't do something or I don't post something or whatever it is that we get so wrapped up because we treat everything like a transaction.
Yeah.
We treat everything like a to-do list. But actually, that's the wrong way to do it, to go around do it. Like if you're waking up, we go into strategy mode, for example. And I feel like so many people that run their own business, they go straight into strategy mode. They go straight into let's get stuff done, right? And stuff done is very transactional without really kind of questioning why you're doing what you're doing. Where is it going to lead to, and it takes the fun out of it. In all honesty, running a business should be fun.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, like recently, last couple of weeks, it hasn't been fun. And I'm really kind of questioning my day to day and things like that. And what I'm doing wrong. What is, define what fun is, and everyone has their own version of fun. But again, it's like, we talked about offline about the pressures of entrepreneurship and the pressures of having a family, for example, or if you've got kids, that shit is real. That is real stuff. But ultimately, it's also about stepping back, reflecting, creating inventory or taking inventory and finding out what's working and what's not working. What are you doing that brings you fun, which brings you happiness? What are the things that you're not doing what are the things that are you doing that's taking up most of your time that's not creating happiness and fun? So I think that's, again, grabbing a diary and start writing all the things and kind of writing down what your typical day looks like. Are you doing what you want to do, or are you doing things that you shouldn't be doing? And can you systemize it? Can you delegate it? Can you find a who that is better than you, because hey, do things that you enjoy doing in the business?
Well, I think that's the important thing of probably coming to someone like yourself, like mentorship and coaching, to help you with these things, because once you're in it, you can't see the wood for the trees. To see yourself forward, and it can be a little bit scary, because it's almost like, well, will I have to change what I'm doing completely, or take a step back? It's taking a step back to move forward, as it were. And that can be, I guess, self-reflection maybe can be a little bit scary in some ways. We have to confront things about ourselves that maybe we don't want to, but are important to be able to move forward. But I think that's something really important, something we can all take on board and think about doing if we are feeling a bit challenged at the moment. And I think there is an air of challenge for a lot of people in entrepreneurship at the moment, well, in many walks of life, but in entrepreneurship especially.
Agreed.
Yeah. So take us through, if someone was to come to you, take us through how you would take them through the process of when you start with them to get them to that sort of high performing, highly profitable state where they're actually loving what they're doing again, and they have their purpose back in life.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one of the things that I like to do is to diagnose what are the gaps that's holding you back. Everyone's got gaps. Everyone's got blind spots. Everyone's got struggles. The first thing that we've got to do is identify what they are, because if you knew what they were, then guess what? You wouldn't be coming to me. It's as simple as that, right? So the first thing is to diagnose. So as an example, we've created a great diagnostics tool, especially if you are looking to grow, scale and exit over the next sort of 24 to 36 months. And the idea is we have it takes about 4 to 5 minutes, but the diagnostics tool actually hits on 5 particular areas. And at the end of it provides a personalized report on what you're doing well and what you need to make improvements to. Diagnosing what the challenge is. It's a bit like going to the doctor. I have a diagnosis. I'm feeling this. I'm feeling that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So once the diagnosis is out the way, it's then, okay, you understand the symptoms, cause and effect. What's the treatment plan? So the treatment plan is, okay, well, this is where the strategy work comes in. Yeah. So, and as part of this strategy work, if it doesn't, it will only work based on these conditions type of thing. Yeah. So once you've got then the strategy, it's then the implementation, which is stage 3. Ultimately, some people come to me and I'll give them a roadmap and I'll say, here, Julia, here's a roadmap. Go away, go work on it. Okay. Or we can work it together. So that's something that obviously we offer, but it's more based around strategic advisory, not so much coaching, because coaching is not something that I do, but I do strategic advisory. So it's understanding those blind spots, diagnosing those blind spots, saying, okay, what is it that you're trying to achieve, making sure they align to each other, creating a roadmap or a plan, and then implementation.
Which is very similar to sort of coaching an athlete, isn't it?
In a way, absolutely.
They go and perform. Maybe they don't do well, or maybe they do. I think it was Clive Woodward who said, the year that we won the World Cup, 2003, was it 2003?
Something like that.
And I remember, it's a quote I always like to remember, and I hope I remember it correctly, was, when you lose a game, that's the time to go down the pub and have a drink and get your commiserations. And what he said about when we win, that is the time to get in the boardroom, say what we did well and how we can do it better.
Yes.
So it's almost like this, you play your sport, you go back after, assess whether it was good, bad, what you did wrong, what the other opponent was doing better, and how you can better improve and move forward, even when when you've had a great success. And that's kind of similar. The way I'm seeing it is from what you're saying. It has a kind of similar kind of theme or process to it.
Yes, absolutely. How can you fix something if you're not aware of what to fix?
Exactly. But even if you're doing really well, there's still things like, well, you did this well, we need to do more of this. And how can we do that even better than we did it last time?
Exactly.
And I think then that makes you get excited. You start getting the yes, because almost you've got this inspiration, you've got a way forward. And I've had this sometimes. As soon as I get an idea, then I get excited again. And I think and that's why having someone like you that you can lean on, or even if you don't have a full professional mentor, someone that you can go to and say, look, I'm having this problem. Because sometimes you need that feedback. You need those people to show you. And because you can just get a bit, the blurred vision, I like to say, is you can't see your way forward.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I've had lack of clarity a lot of times, and sometimes the lack of clarity can really hold you back.
Yeah.
So I agree.
And I think people tend to think that people who are very high performers, they don't have these issues, but they do. They do. They're just having them at a higher level than everybody else.
Absolutely. We all have limitations within ourselves. Like, we're all human after all, last time I looked. Yeah. So we all have our own limitations. It's just managing those limitations.
Yeah. And what have been some of the transformations that you've seen over the years of you working in this way with people that they've been surprised at, that they've been, they didn't realize was going to happen, something that, out of the blue was a shock to them that they've been impressed with?
Yeah, I think, results happen in different ways, and people come to me for different reasons, right? So the results are going to be different from person to person. When the clients that I work with, most of them, nearly everyone walks away with an increase in confidence. They have a much clearer picture about where they're going, because if you're planning on going on a road trip and you don't have a roadmap or some directions, then you're going to be going anywhere, right? And so I think that's very important, is having a very crystal clear plan, getting very succinct and aligned, which is extremely important. And again, like I said, understanding oneself in terms of your limitations and challenging the status quo. So don't do something just because there's a trend, or don't do it because someone else has told you to do it, or you think society or everyone else is right. People love unconventional, curiosity, be curious, and just be you, share your opinions.
Yeah. And over your years of speaking to all these sort of world-class performers, what would you say was the top sort of 5 or 6 principles that if you were to share with the audience today, that they could benefit from learning from these people?
In terms of high performers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've already mentioned a few at the very, very beginning, of course. I think we talked about mental toughness and resilience. So, entrepreneurship is a choice. It's not an easy choice, but it's a choice, which may come with the benefits. There's also flaws. So nothing is a perfect world. Making sure that you've got a plan, because all athletes have a plan. Yeah. Whether it be to run faster, whether it be to compete at the top, or whatever it is, you've got to have a plan. You've got to have a purpose and a plan. If you don't have the strategy, then you're not going to go anywhere. Yeah. That's extremely important. We talked about strengths and weaknesses during the show. So understanding your strengths as an individual, but then how to either delegate or play to your strengths and delegate your weaknesses is a common quote that I use. I think those are the main ones.
Yeah. Because I think, obviously the audience here, you're sort of 40s plus. It doesn't mean that it's the end of the road for you. You can still take on these principles. You can still make that change now. It's not over, because it's never too late, but you need to get back that energy. And I think that's why sort of taking these principles and adding them to and making that start today is going to pay dividends to you moving forward in your future, not in your future business, but your future life, whether your professional relationships or your personal ones.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. That's growth for you, personal growth. If you're not moving forwards, you're moving backwards, and if you're moving backwards, you're dying.
Yeah, and you can't really move forward in your business or in entrepreneurship if you haven't resolved your own personal issues first of all.
Of course not.
You've got to clear that and be able to move forward, and that's the only way to sort of step forward into executing and performing at a higher level.
Absolutely.
Recovering from those issues that you may not even be aware of, because they can be there for decades, and it takes awareness, coming back to that awareness, and then, as you said, being accountable for all of that and making those changes.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. So look, if people wanted to find out more about you or get in touch with you, how would they do that? And is there a sort of type of a person that you sort of look to work with? What would someone expect if they were to, think about, right, I really want to look more into what Adam's doing, and if this is something that's right for me?
Yeah, I tend to work with established founders that are looking to, they want to exit, and I do that by helping them to increase their growth and through scaling up. So and it doesn't matter if you're 30 years old or you're 55 years old, it really makes no difference fundamentally. To have a business is eventually you want to sell a business, otherwise you're creating a glorified job. And so it's about optionality, having the option and the choice to be able to sell your business further on down the line. So one of the things that we do particularly well is working with founders that want to build a business that doesn't rely on them. So being able to take a holiday, able to imagine being in imagine how long would your business survive if you were being run over by a bus today. So this is what a lot of investors, a lot of private equity firms look for in businesses, is they look at how dependent your business is on you. Even if you don't want to sell right now, that's okay. But there will come a time in your life where you're thinking, is this all life will give me? Is there other options? I want to achieve this. I want to go and do this. I want to, there might be something else that you want to do. You want to do more traveling or whatever it is. So if people want to, if this resonates with you, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is kind of where I play. And you already mentioned the Business Strategist podcast as well.
Yeah. And I think we do forget that as well. We forget sometimes, particularly when we're younger, we're sort of going through this excitement of starting the business and wanting its success, and we think we're going to do it forever. But it's that forgetting that we're going to, at some point, maybe we won't be able to do it for some reason, or we'll have other ideas or other things we want to go and explore, like you say, traveling or whatever it may be. That's important to pay. I think that's something that I probably didn't think about when I started out initially, was that at some point I'll want to exit the business. I want to do it till the day I drop dead necessarily. I may do, but I may not. It's having that option in there, I think, is really important.
Absolutely. It's knowing that there is always an end point.
Yeah.
Because there is always an end point to everything.
Yeah.
And so having that options and putting those things in place now will pay dividends down the line.
It's about being strategic and intentional about it as well. It's not just the business, it's how you're going to end that business and being realistic about it.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Look, thank you, Adam, for sharing all this with us. I hope we've had enough time to explore all those topics and share as much. I'm sure there's so much more you can share in more time. But I really appreciate you coming in and giving us all this information that we can take away and start implementing today.
Phenomenal. Yeah, really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks very much, Julia.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Adam, once again. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Unleash Your Inner Athlete. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.